Hey folks, Mike Skinner here, and thank you for being here with us today. It's a very muggy day here in New Hampshire, hot and miserable outside, so it's nice to have some AC. So today I'm going to do a part 2 on Just Get Over It, and because there were some things I didn't get to say the last time, and trying not to be too long with these recordings, trying to be mindful of time and not going overboard. And it's very easy to do when you start chatting away. So some of the reasons why I do what I do is when I learned many years ago, when my struggles impacted me tremendously, was learning that I'm not alone in this, that 1 in 4 females and 1 in 6 males are sexually abused, assaulted before the age of 18. And 1 in 7 children experience child abuse or neglect, and most experts believe that that's an underestimate, so that's not even capturing everything. I also learned that 1 in 5, some studies say 1 in 4 folks will deal with a mental health concern sometime in their life. And yet 2/3 are not going to seek help or treatment due to the stigma and discrimination. That says a lot about society and not helping folks, so that the stigma itself keeps people from reaching out for help. That's just going to keep a lot of people stuck. I also learned, again, it's over 90% of folks that are receiving services at mental health centers are in fact dealing with trauma. And a lot of that is also, you peel back the layers, is a lot of abuse in their lives. So significant trauma. Now, I'm mindful that not everybody has had trauma in their lives and they can end up with mental health conditions. So I'm not, just painting everyone with the same brush. I'm not. But those are significant numbers. If it's over 90%, that's saying a lot. When we address the trauma and the abuse and the mental health challenges that we all experience, I truly believe we would close the prisons, would reduce divorce rates, would end suicide as we know it. We could lower substance and alcohol misuse dramatically. Would improve folks' health and life expectancy. So those are some of the reasons why to talk about these things. We need to talk about it. And there's no shame in that. We shouldn't be shamed, blamed, or maligned, ostracized, pushed aside, told to just get over it. When we need to talk, because that's how we heal. Some talking points, something to address. I am at this point, and it's been the last couple of years, I'm dealing with, I'll call it brain fog. I'm dealing with fatigue. I'm dealing with struggles with word retrieval. I've always had a good command of the English language, but I've had several head injuries, concussions over the last couple of years that have been pretty significant. And I started with mild traumatic brain injury as a child from all the abuse that I experienced. So it doesn't take much for me to have a simple concussion, a fall, slipping on black ice. That was one of the things last year. And then another one was a Adirondack chair broke and I fell straight back. So those both happened last April and in May. So I'm still dealing with that. That's the good news is I know neural pathways are being created, new ones. I will heal from this. It'll get better. I will not probably go back to where I was before, but that's okay. So that is, I have to look at notes a lot more than I ever used to. Before, when I would speak, I would just need 3 to 5, talking points, and boom, I could go off on a tangent. Not so easy now. Again, because of dealing with and obviously post-traumatic stress adds its own level of brain confusion and fog. I'd like to talk about the word disorder. Myself personally, I don't like the word. I know it's out there in the mainstream. I like to think of it that we're dealing with mental health injuries. We're dealing with post-traumatic stress injury. So language is important. If we could learn how to change that language, maybe we wouldn't be so maligned. Because another word, 2 words that are very traumatic to me, they hurt, is hearing mental illness, because I heard that when I went for help, and I just kept hearing, you're mentally ill, you'll be this way your whole life. And it was this mantra you just kept hearing over and over again. And in a few years, I went through a really rough divorce, and that was used against me also in the divorce court. I just kept hearing how mentally ill I am. After a while, it just wore me down. Now, I know most of society, providers, that's the language they use. I prefer to look at it as mental health challenges, mental health concerns, mental health injuries. We've dealt with trauma and abuse. This has impacted the whole mind, the body, and the spirit. It's not just locked up in my head, or in other folks. I'd like to share about the just getting over it piece, because I'm going to talk about Bob and Sally. That's not their real names. I'm going to protect them. They have, and again, I hate labels, as that sign says, labeled jars, not people. They have the diagnosis, one of many, of the borderline personality disorder. And again, boy, that is a really hurtful statement to just say about someone that borderline. I just find that offensive, crippling, and hurtful. I know their backstory because I've come to know them as friends, as peers, as good people. They suffered significant trauma and abuse in their lives. So Bob and Sally. And it was from their significant caregivers, their parents. So let's start with Sally. Her parents were both pedophiles, and they pimped her out to other people. How she found the courage as a young girl to call the police and get taken out of that home is beyond me, because that took a lot of courage. Boy, that was good for her, the self-reliance and the skills to get out of that environment. But then that led to foster care. Now, again, I don't label everything with a brush. Not everyone is the same, but she did experience more abuse in some of these foster care settings, and that is a known fact. There are great people in the foster care system that are really, truly doing great things for kids, and there are others that are in it for all the wrong reasons, whether it's just for that money, so they're neglecting the kids, or they could be, it's also not only the neglecting, but they're abusing them. So how the heck is a kid going to, find stability in the environment? They're not. Bob, pretty much the same thing. He didn't call the authorities, so it took a long time for him as a young man to finally get out of his house. But he was brought to the authorities, so he too went through the foster care system, I think as a young teen. And again, the abuse happening there. So these are two lovely people, great people, but they're stuck. And they're stuck in the mental health system. And all they have been hearing for decades is how mentally ill they are. They have not been taught skills how to move past that. And if they have, it's just much harder, because the folks that were supposed to care for you hurt you. That is my experience. My parents were my pedophiles. Their friends were pedophiles. It's really hard to heal when you don't have that self-support, when you don't grow up in love. Another dear friend of mine, that's one of her struggles, that her parents didn't love her. She was just a thing, an entity, someone that was taking up space in the home, and to be blamed for all kinds of problems in the home that had nothing. How can a child cause all these problems? So these things have an impact upon us. And I've known people who have been able to maybe move along a little bit more in the healing journey because they did have love and support around them. And that's one of the things that I try to stress is we need community. So if you didn't have it as a child, if we can find it through peer support or through the treatment providers, just treating us as human beings, we can learn to trust. We can learn to trust. I was going to say again, I didn't have trust as a young child, and I doubt that Bob and Sally had trust. So again, to just say, just get over it, I mean, really stop to think about that. How can someone just get over that? That's locked up inside of you. We all want to be loved by our parents. We come into this world with love. Children are born with love. They're taught to hate, and it's through the abuse, and they're taught to feel indifferent and shame and the blame, and they internalize that, and that takes time to heal. So again, just supporting and caring for one another can go a long way. And in terms of, again, addressing when folks want to say, just get over it. For myself, medical procedures are tough for me. And last week, I had an endoscopy. I'm a grown man. I can take care of myself. I have fears like anyone else, but I face them. I go into these settings, and it's very hard for me because it's bringing me back to when I was a child and when I was manipulated and because a lot of pictures were being taken. So when I'm in that vulnerable state, what washes over me is the feeling of the helplessness of the child. I'm aware of it now. I'm mindful of it. I couldn't make heads or tails why. So I avoided going to doctors and procedures until it got too bad that I had to go. So again, I'm only sharing that because these things are inside of us. I get through it. So that day and the day after, I'm wiped out. But I'm aware of it. So I do things for self-care. A lot of walking, some exercising, listening to music, playing music, being out in the yard, walking through the forest, different things like that can help me to cope and then get back into the mainstream, if you will. Rainy days are the same thing for me. Again, I'm not going to get graphic, but I would run off to the woods. I grew up in Billerica, Massachusetts. Across the street from me was this huge forest and field, and that was my escape. That was my home to get away from the abuse. On the rainy days, I couldn't do that. So then I was at the mercy of my mother and what she and her perverse things that she would do. So rainy days, that dredges that up. And again, being mindful of it, it helps me to cope with it. But years ago, I was not aware. So if a rainy day came up and I was with my family and all of a sudden this funk, this dissociative piece came across, it had nothing to do with it. My family wasn't doing a darn thing to me, my ex-wife or the kids. It would just, it was like I was on the inside looking out, and I couldn't even verbalize what the heck was going on, but I would just become this, the lump on the log, because I was always full of energy and a lot of fun, but when that came over me, it wasn't so much fun. I wish I had the awareness on trauma back then that I do now. I don't. So that's where learning self-forgiveness for myself, because I can't go back and change that. But I can, my sharing, maybe that can help someone right now hearing that, a parent, maybe an adult child, maybe a teenager hearing this, that maybe that's why mom or dad are struggling, or their uncle, their aunt, their teacher, a close ones. Just, again, trying to bring some sanity to the insanity that was inflicted upon us. I have found that over the years that EMDR has helped with negating a lot of the impact of certain things. There were certain images of abuse that took place for me as a child that were just, locked in my psyche, and they'd just bubble up to the surface. And again, that too would put me in a really bad state of mind, just down and out, a depression, and not understanding what the heck was going on. A lot of times, when I was younger, it was just picking up a beer bottle, drinking too much, getting in a fight, promiscuity. When I was married with kids, I would just go to my office, or I would just get in my car and I'd drive. I'd just go away. I had to run, go to get away from these things. EMDR helped me to desensitize, take away the power of that image, that particular image, and other images. So now, as I'm talking, those images can flow through my consciousness, but they're not crippling me anymore. Eye movement desensitization realization, EMDR, is great for a lot of us. It doesn't work for everyone, because I have friends that have tried and it hasn't worked for them. It can also help you with some things, but it may dredge up other things. So just be mindful of that. So there are things to do with that for healing. EMDR might be one of them. Another thing is tapping, emotional freedom technique. I'm going to share the website resource for Brad Yates. He's got a whole slew of videos on tapping, emotional freedom technique. That can help. I wake up a couple times a week still from nightmares, just bad dreams, and I can't go back to sleep. So I do my slow breathing, deep breathing, trying to calm it down. And I'll do several rounds of tapping to help try to get me back to sleep, at least calm me down a bit. I'd like to share some thoughts from Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, again, the author of The Body Keeps the Score. No one can treat a war or abuse, rape, molestation, or any other horrendous event. For that matter, what has happened cannot be undone. But what can be dealt with are the imprints of the trauma on body, mind, and soul. The crushing sensations in your chest that you label as anxiety or depression, the fear of losing control, always being on alert for danger or rejection, self-loathing, the nightmares and flashbacks, the fog that keeps you from staying on task and from engaging fully in what you are doing, being able to fully open your heart to another human being. Neuroscience research shows that the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our inner experience and learning to befriend what is going on inside ourselves. So again, this is from the expert who's been studying these things for decades, him and so many others, Dr. Bruce Perry, I could go on, Dr. Gabor Mate, there's a ton of them, Judith Herman. That's just scratching the surface of so many that are doing great things with this. I'm bringing my personal experience, what they articulate in their research, their studies, and working with their clients, their patients, whatever terminology one feels comfortable using. So things that have helped me with the healing. Again, music, with the listening, performing, just playing in this room. There's my guitar back there. I have a room set up with drums and congas. Movement, that's one thing I've learned about trauma. Movement keeps us, so dance, do dance in your room. I do a lot of walking, and I also like to hike through the woods. Swimming, when the weather is great, I like to swim. I used to swim at the Y, but because of the head injuries and those lights and the noise, because there's always something going on, the music, it's too loud. So I had to stop swimming at the Y, and it bummed me out, but there's a lake up the street from me, so when the weather is nice, I swim there. The martial arts, I still practice that in my backyard or in my house to help me get through things. The arts are great for people. Exercise. What has helped me is comedy, just listening. But there was a time when I was so depressed, I could watch a movie that was a great comedy, and I didn't think it was funny. Now I watch it and I can't stop laughing. Again, cooking. When I do these little presentations that I do, or when I've presented to other folks, I always find that I like to start cooking later on, because that helps me to negate all the emotions I've stirred up. Gardening, I love to get my hands in the dirt and all the rest of them. I'm out there with bare feet, and again, there's studies on that show how that helps, and I'll share a link for that. Being in nature, I like reading, I like learning, but again, the post-traumatic stress and the mild traumatic brain injuries, the concussions, has impacted that. It takes me a long time now to read a book. I was a voracious reader online. I can only read a few articles per day, and then they back up. I don't like it, but I've learned acceptance with it. I've learned to be at peace with it. So, but again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I know the brain, the plasticity, there are new neural pathways being created. So I'm hopeful that maybe I can increase my getting past just reading 20 pages, 30 pages. Maybe I can get back up to 50 or 60. Maybe even reading a book through a day again. I don't know. I'd like to share a quote. It's from an unknown author. Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives. And again, that sums it up. And that's when I'm sharing here, that's what just it's my lived experience. And when I share little snippets of other folks that I've met, the stuff is still with us, but we can find peace and comfort in life. We can have joy, and it's so important to have that. Share these things with your friends, your family, but I'm also aware that you can lead the horse to water, but not all want to drink it. I still believe in the religion of the three monkeys. I don't believe it, but I'm just aware that a large part of society doesn't want to hear about it, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to see it. So that leaves us stuck. That leaves us finding a community of folks through peer support or whatever ways that you find that, because you're not going to get it from everyone. Not everyone is going to accept what we've gone through or want to hear about it. So find a community, find that peer support. It's out there. There's incredible organizations and people and peer support agencies out there that can help you. Because I've learned that when we deal with these traumas, so many times people are giving up on us. They just get tired. And I can understand that to a point. But, just hang in there if you can. I'm going to share an article from Dr. Michael Friedman. And the article says, let's get over telling people to get over it. And he talks of how the world is designed to encourage people to keep going, not to be slowed down by emotional pain. People who struggle with their pain are often on the receiving end of stigma, ranging from frustration and contempt to avoidance and abandonment. And paradoxically, the more we try to get over our emotional pain before we are ready to, by avoiding it, the more we suffer. And that is so true. So, I'm going to close out now. I'm going to end with this quote from Laurell Hamilton. There are wounds that never show on the body that are deeper and more hurtful than anything that bleeds. So again, I'm going to close out. Please do click the subscribe button and the little bell that can let you know when a new video has been posted. And again, thank you for being here. And I will again be sharing 8 resources. I want to close also with some thoughts from my friend Sava Brooks. And that was something that I wanted to start doing last week and I forgot. I almost forgot this time. I'm going to start sharing at the end a book, a poem, a piece of art, something from survivor friends of mine who are doing great things. And her book is called Journey to the Heart, a 365-day guide to thriving after trauma. And again, her link will be in there with the other resources, so do give her a visit, find out what she's about. She's also a trauma recovery coach. So this is day 96. I just pulled this open last night and I said, I'm going to stick with this. Emotional abandonment is very painful. Abused children have to find a way to disconnect from the pain in order to survive it. What worked best for me was to stay distracted. I made sure I was so busy there wasn't time to think or feel. Distraction is a toxic coping skill. When I'm distracted, I'm disconnected. Does this sound like you? I shared that earlier myself, how I would just run or work. And then day 98, one more. How can you tell you're healing? You no longer have the need to be in control all the time. And again, so that's from my dear friend Sava Brooks. I will share another book next week from another friend of mine, and that's what I plan to do. Again, thank you for being here. Take care. Have a good day. Have a good week. And thank you.